Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth, back in the basement as it were. Of course it is the 4th of July, and I'm sure there are a lot of brain-dead people out there who are celebrating even now the so-called birth of this so-called country. And the Independence Day celebrations will continue into the night with fireworks and all the usual festivities of cookouts and drinking and everything else in celebration of a sham, a travesty, and a falsehood. Of course, I have commented before on the state of affairs in this country and the fact that this country is not a country at all, but a giant multinational corporation with tentacles everywhere, controlled by, run, and completely owned by the criminal, wealthy, and ultra elite. And it is their goal to either own or break up and render useless any opposition to their globalist plans. We live in a sham society. We've had the recent revelations of Edward Snowden, whether or not he is actually a whistleblower or some kind of double agent with the things that he is revealing about the NSA spying program, the PRISM internet surveillance program, and also the collection of cell phone data, so-called metadata. There's more to this story that is coming out bit by bit, which indicates what everybody has known for a long time, that we live in a police state that is run by a secret police in the form of the Homeland Security Department, the NSA, the CIA, all of the usual suspects, all of the intelligence agencies, the Army, everything. They're all involved in this. And they're going to be involved even more. And as there is an impetus for action or activism within this country, people are going to be targeted more and more. Now, we can take a look and just get a little flavor of things that are going on around the world. We see that in Egypt, the military has forced the hand-picked U.S. administration of Mohamed Morsi out. And the military there is ordering an election as soon as possible in order to elect someone else to the office. And of course, there is widespread unrest amongst people who previously had been supporters of Obama for his charismatic appeal to the peoples in these countries around the world when he first came on the scene, now having been revealed as a globalist, gangster, shyster, fuckface who has his absolute and final end of the day goal the furtherance of the wealthy elite and the destruction and crushing of everybody else underneath him. And if that means war, if that means raining down drones on wedding parties and murdering teenagers and children and people who are collateral damage but repurposed for the purposes of drone fighting to, hey, if they were there, they must have been terrorists. So the 10-year-old kid that was killed, terrorist. The babies killed, terrorists. The wives killed, terrorists. The sons and daughters killed, terrorists. If they're there, they're terrorists. Therefore, you don't have any more collateral damage. So every drone strike is 100% successful with no collateral damage because everybody that was killed by a drone who was in that area had to be a terrorist. End of discussion. You have the NSA, of course, lying directly to Congress and to the American people when they said that they were not spying on Americans, but in fact they are. But there is also much more to that because the NSA program is spying on foreign countries in a massive way, looking at ways to hack into their computer systems and take control and do many other things behind the scenes without the knowledge of these other countries. Now, I would aver that this is not a government policy. This is not our government saying that we are going to look at these other governments and we're trying to think of this in a in a worldwide political sense, but in fact that the government of the United States, such as it is in fact an extension of the multinational corporations that actually own the country. So this program is probably part of an industrial espionage program meant to counter the effects of the Chinese, who are constantly stealing patent data and inventions and creating their own knockoff products for just about everything that's created in this country. And I think that because the corporations run the shots, they're the ones that are having the NSA and all these other alphabet soup agencies do this sort of thing in order to gain the upper hand for US-based corporations in the world of globalism. Now, there's the other story of the other writer who died in his car, supposedly accidentally, but many people think that he was murdered. And this guy was the one who brought down General McChrystal with his story in Rolling Stone. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Snowden is not targeted in any way. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the Hastings guy was, I think that's his name, Hastings. There's so many names going through my head, I can't remember who everybody is. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he was murdered, okay, that he was targeted for assassination and he was killed. One then has to ask why Snowden was not subjected to the same summary judgment. And that could lend itself to the idea that he's a plant. You certainly cannot argue that he fled the coop, so to speak, and was outside the range of being killed, because that's just total lunacy. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If they want you dead, they'll get you dead. And you'll be dead when they want you dead, because they have people everywhere who can do this. Now, on my radio show last week, I talked to H.P. Albarelli, and we were talking about a book that he wrote called A Secret Order, which was about strangeness and synchronicity surrounding the JFK assassination. And one of the things that we discussed during the course of that show was that in the 1960s, there was an assassination program that the CIA had called QJ-Win. Now, there was also a master assassin who also went by the code name QJ-Win. Now, uncovered in some of the material that he looked into, Mr. Albarelli found that in one memorandum or another that he got out of the government, they revealed that there was a QJ-Win office in Los Angeles. And of course, Los Angeles should be important for people who are into assassinations, because that, of course, is where Bobby Kennedy met his end, at the Ambassador Hotel. And there's long been rumors of CIA people being there at the time Bobby Kennedy was at the Ambassador Hotel. And it seemed to have been confirmed in a photograph of two known employees, or at least highly suspected employees, that were at the Ambassador Hotel that day. And of course, the case of Robert Kennedy's assassination is just as much a piece of conspiracy as JFK. Now, one has to wonder, since the CIA had an assassination office in the United States, who were the likely targets of that assassination office? It seems only logical that if they had an assassination office in Los Angeles, that they would be targeting people in North America, i.e. the United States Incorporated. Now, one then has to ask oneself if these programs have continued to this day. And I doubt that any intelligence agency who has actually adopted programs such as MKUltra for mind control purposes, MK Naomi for biological warfare and germ warfare and chemical warfare, and who also had highly developed assassination and hit squads, that they would abandon all of this at some random point in time, supposedly because it didn't go anywhere. Well, they were in business for quite a while, and they accomplished quite a bit, and I don't believe that these programs ended when anybody said they ended. I think they continued on and they progressed to logical conclusions. So one could easily imagine that there are assassination teams that are present and around today that are directed either by the government or through the government by the corporate masters that run everything. So if Hastings was murdered, it could have been as a result of these assassination teams. There is no doubt in my mind that intelligence agencies adopting these policies are never going to just decide one day that, oh, this is too unethical or this is too bad, considering the amount of horror that they thrust upon people with their experimentation, that they would finally say, oh man, I'm human, I can't do this anymore. No, don't believe it. So if there's a QJ Wynn assassination office in Los Angeles, then were there more around the country? Are there ones around the country right now who can go out and take out people whenever it's necessary? That may be true. Now, the reason why this guy might have been killed in his car is because he's targeting the military. And supposedly his next story was going to be going after David Petraeus. Now, David Petraeus is a front and center in the Benghazi situation, okay, where we had the murder of several Americans, including the ambassador in Libya. Now, if in fact, as Webster Tarpley has stated, there was an attempted coup against Obama by factions in support of Romney prior to the election in 2012 that involved certain generals who allowed Benghazi to happen or created it for such purpose as to cause Obama to be ousted and Romney to be put in, then one must conclude that the coup participants who have not been routed are still in place. Therefore, if General Petraeus is still in a position to provide for the people that he reports to and to do the job for which he is ultimately doing his job for, then he still is someone of importance within this cabal, even though he does not occupy an official government position. He still knows an awful lot of things, having been the head of the CIA and the head of forces in Afghanistan, etc., four-star general, you name it. This guy has been privy to a lot of information over the years. So, if he was being targeted by some kind of new investigative report and suddenly winds up dead, this could indicate that Hastings was murdered because he was going after people who are under the radar and not public officials, not people that people are looking at right now for being behind some of the cabals that are going on within this country. So, what do we make of all of that? Well, I guess we can't really make anything of it except to put out speculation. So, let me just say a couple final words for people who, still want to believe in the American dream and the future of the United States and all of this sort of thing. All one has to do is look at any period in time in the past of this supposed country, and you can see the kinds of things that we are still experiencing today, but in more gross forms. These are forms that are thrown right in your face, where people try to enact a law, say, this is going to happen tomorrow. I swear, they'll have a law that'll say that, something absolutely ludicrous, like women have to go around without shoes on, so they can't run fast or far away from the men that abuse them, if they're in an abusive relationship. It's on a par with the kind of attacks and assaults on women and minorities and other things that have been going on consistently and have been ramping up during the course of Obama's presidency, whether by plan or not. Doesn't really make any difference. We live in a bizarre world right now where facts and logic have no basis. Do not bother to try and engage in logical discourse with people who hold rigid belief systems, because at this point in time, logic and reason have no place, because we live in an irrational world. We live in a corporate-dominated so-called country, which is actually a giant corporation, which is owned and run by the richest and wealthiest oligarchs and plutocrats in the world. They call all the shots for everything. We do not have any freedoms. Whatever you imagine that you have, whatever you think the Constitution is, whatever rights you suppose are due to you, I'm afraid to tell you that you're in error. Because anytime they want to take those so-called rights away from you, they will. End of discussion. Let's look at one example, just for your consideration. Look at this guy, I think his name is Todashev, who was a friend of Tamerlane Tsarnaev, one of the so-called Boston bombers, the one that was killed. Now, Tamerlane was supposedly involved in a triple murder. The FBI was looking into this. They came across this Todashev guy, I believe that's his name, in Florida. They went to interview him at his apartment. First reports that came out said that after confessing to the triple murder, he lunged at one of the FBI agents with a knife and was shot. Later it was reported that he had no weapon and was shot. Now, he was supposedly shot 6 times, and once to the top of the head, in like a coup de grace manner. Now, the last news story I heard or saw that talked about this at all was from May 30th. Now, that's over a month, and we have not heard one single thing about a person who, by the information that we have in front of us, we could easily draw the conclusion that the FBI murdered. Plain and simple. And yet, we can't even have anything in the news to discuss this. So where were his rights? The most fundamental being the right to life. And not to mention the right to a fair trial, which is one of the things that has very much slipped away in recent years. Look at Chris Dorner, murdered in a cabin, burnt alive inside of a cabin, and prevented the right of due process. So, you do not live in a country. You have no rights. So, there is a good side to all of that, believe it or not. Because there is nothing to lose. What are you going to lose? Are you going to go to a prison to make license plates? And make 12 cents an hour being prison labor so that you can be part of the prison industrial complex? If you decide that you are not going to take the kind of crap that's being shoved down our faces every day in this society, what do you have to lose? What rights can be taken away from you that cannot be taken away from you anyway for having done nothing? So if there's nothing else that you can learn on this 4th of July, 2013, it's that there is nothing left to lose anymore. There is nothing left to lose for you to speak your mind, for you to point at people and say, you know what, you're a lying sack of shit, you're a thieving motherfucker. There is nothing to lose by saying President Obama is a sack of shit who got into office by bankers and is paying back the bankers and the multinational corporations who got him into power and who are keeping him in power. He doesn't give a shit about anything but his paycheck and his masters. And he's a piece of shit. Everybody in Congress is a piece of shit and an asshole. And none of them give a shit about anybody out here. They no longer represent us. They represent their corporate paymasters. So there's nothing left to lose. When the government can come and smash your door in at the behest of bankers who run the fucking government to force you to pay back a student loan, or to at least take you into custody to make you pay your student loan back and kill you in the process, then is there anything left to lose by doing things that are necessary? I'm not calling for people to be violent, because obviously violence begets violence. And if you decide to go out and shoot somebody, heaven forbid, you're likely to get shot yourself. And what good is that going to do for anybody? No, I'm not calling for violence, but I'm calling for activism again. Because there really is nothing to lose. And I see a lot of people who are hesitant to get involved because they think it's not about me. It's not my fight. I'm not involved in this. I don't care. I'm lethargic. I just want to play my video games. I want to watch my stupid TV. And they fear getting involved. They fear activism because they fear somehow that there is something that is going to come down on them. Well, something can come down on you right fucking now. And if they can crush you like a fucking bug right now, when you haven't done a single fucking thing like they've done to many others, then what is there to lose? So if there's any message I'd like to give you for the 4th of July is that you have nothing to lose by becoming active and becoming an activist. To try and scrape out something for real people, real families, to produce real jobs, a real future, to provide homes for the homeless, to provide care for the needy, to provide community for people who are outcasts. All of those things are vitally important to the future of this society and to our ever resembling a country. There is nothing left to lose. So why not get involved? Thank you.